Okay, welcome back, guys. This time I'm going to go over something that really isn't explained almost at all in the game, but is really important when it comes to your pawns. We're going to talk about inclinations in this video. This one here is something that is kind of a pet peeve of mine. I see a lot of pawns with bad inclinations, but it's something that is easily fixed just by knowing what's going on, but something that a lot of people miss. So, your pawn has inclinations. It's basically a set of different AI tactics. All the inclinations are different variables depending on what you do. They learn from how you act. For example, as my assassin, I had a strider. As my assassin, I prioritized climbing enemies. I went after the big guys. My strider did the same. My strider would climb enemies if it could, or it would use its bow if it could, and stuff like that. As my mage, since I'm running around as a sorcerer, my mage tends to stay in the back, focus on ranged attackers, and these are things that are learned. Their AI behavior, though, is even more so. So the AI behavior changes over time. You can also
Within
change
this
it with
tent sits a
potions
rift
get
stone.
gotten from this man using rift crystals. You can buy them
This
all
pawn
here.
shop,
I'm going to
choose
go
as you
over
will,
the
sir.
different, basically the different options here. So they give you a short description in game, but basically what Scather means is they're going to go after the biggest, strongest enemy. It prioritizes focusing on them. It also improves their ability or makes them more likely to climb enemies. It's great for physical builds, great for things like fighters and striders and stuff like that. Not so much for mages. If you put it on a mage, for example, the mage will tend to try and climb the enemy, and it's really bad. Do that for a mage. They're not good for climbing. Now, going after the biggest enemy might not be bad, but climbing enemies is a little bit un- under ineffective. Now, we're gonna medicant. Medicant is one of my pet peeves. It sounds great. It says the pawn realigns the pawn's inclination that they fight with heed, health, and stamina. It means they're more likely to use healing items. They're more likely to keep in mind their health. It also means mages are more likely to heal you. This sounds great. It's very misleading though. It's also a very easy one to get. If you use the help command a lot, you'll get this one. But the problem with this one is if it's too high on the list. So like I said, you have a couple primary ones. You have a first, second, third, and then after that, the ones later don't become as important. If you have Medikit really high on that list, your pawn will almost always interrupt its spellcasting to help you. Your mage will constantly be trying to heal you, even if you just take a scratch. It's really annoying. Having this as a fourth or a fifth one, not bad. Your pawn will heal you half health, something like that. If you have it as one or two, your pawn's going to heal you as soon as you take damage, and it makes them almost completely ineffective in a fight, other than they're your healer now, instead of actually being able to cast spells when you're perfectly fine. Um, Mitigator. Mitigator's a really good one, I feel, for pawns. Because Scather, while it's good for the fighters and stuff, Mitigator I feel is better for ranged attackers, or even fighters are even good if it as well. Because what it means is they're going to thin out the crowd. They're going to go after the weakest enemy. They're going to try and take them out. It also means mages and spellcasters are going to try and use area of effect spells first. They're going to try and use ones that are going to thin out that crowd. This is good for pawns because I feel as a player I can prioritize what I need to. I know where the enemy to focus on, what's dangerous. This one helps the pawns keep the little guys off my back if I go after the big guy. It also crowd control is a great thing in this game. When you have even hobgoblins in a ton of numbers can be really annoying, especially if you're a spellcaster like me. Right now, you get hit, your spell gets interrupted, you just wasted all that time. So having them take care of little enemies is good. Um, but it's depending on what you want your character to do as well. Challenger is one of my favorites. So it's like Mitigator, except for instead of it's like Mitigator and Scather, except for prioritizes ranged weapons and magic. Spellcasters and ranged bow users are probably the most annoying for me because it doesn't matter where I go. I can avoid the guys of the sword. I can go, stand further away. But those guys, they hit you anywhere. And some spells are nasty. Not only that, some rangers can easily shoot you with a bow and knock you off a cliff. Really annoying. So I love Challenger. Challenger means that they're going to go after the ranged attackers, magic users, and it's like Mitigator where they're going to prioritize, area of effect spells. Challenger is probably one of my favorites. But again, it's what you want. Utilitarian. Utilitarian is an interesting one. It promotes teamwork and strategies and stuff like that, and it sounds really good, and it is, but only in certain situations. It's good when your pawn knows a lot about the enemy. So I talked about in an earlier video, as you fight enemies, pawns learn knowledge based on them. If your pawn has a lot of knowledge about enemies, utilitarian is great because it means it's going to know what to do, how to cooperate. Now, utilitarian's best if you have multiple pawns with it as a good inclination. Um, that's how it works the best. So it's really good on high level pawns normally because they have more knowledge. Lower levels, not as good. Now, if you have sorcerers, it's great for sorcerers because it promotes spell syncing, which increases their ability to cast spells quickly and efficiently. Guardian. Guardian's another one of my pet peeves. It happens a lot if you use the help command as well. Sounds great. Basically, it means the pawn's going to protect you. This can cause a lot of issues depending on the build just because of how the pawn interacts. Now, if you're both fighters, for example, this doesn't work out too bad. It means that any enemy that attacks you, your ally is going to attack them, meaning you can now double team enemies pretty effectively. Where it comes into an issue is when you're not a melee class, or when you're, especially when you're not a melee class. That's really all I can say. Or your pawn's not a melee class. Because what happens is your pawn basically sticks to your side without fail. So if you have a fighter pawn and you're running around as a sorcerer, your pawn is almost never going to be in the fight. They're going to be running back and forth between you. Every time you get hit, they're going to run to your side. There's a lot of times where when a fight starts, they just stay there. They don't go engage the enemy. It's a really glitchy one. Sounds great, but in a lot of cases, not very good. If it's a mage, last thing you want them doing while you're a fighter is standing next to the big guy, Cyclops with a club. You want them in the back. But if you're a fighter and you're up in the front and your mage got guardian, guess what they're gonna do? They're gonna probably try and stand beside you. Um, Not a good one to have on a lot of classes. This can be beneficial, especially if it's like a tank and you're, up in the front. But I don't recommend this as a main one. I see this one a lot along the Medicant. I don't recommend it. It's not a very good one in a lot of situations unless you know what you're looking for here. Nexus is similar to Guardian, does the same thing, but makes them prioritize pawns. This one's not as bad, but still, I don't recommend it. Though the stun does have an interesting feature. If your pawn goes down, this inclination will make another pawn pick them up and carry them to you to revive them. Not terrible, but there's a lot better ones in my opinion. Now the last two aren't as combat oriented. So Pioneer means that the basically engages them to scout ahead of the party, lets them travel further out of your range. So most pawns will only go so far away, but Pioneer increases that range. This is okay for certain groups. It means they're going to engage the enemy more, maybe find items more, but it also means they might engage enemies you don't want to fight. So it's kind of got a plus and bonus, but it's not really a combat effect. Acquisitor, I don't really see much of a difference in this one. What this does is means they're going to go collect items. Every pawn will collect items outside of battle every time, but this one makes them apparently collect them in battle. I've never had this one as a main thing, mainly because I don't collect items in battle unless they're really important. So I guess I've never had a pawn get it. But again, it doesn't seem combat oriented, doesn't really seem like a priority. If you're looking for a good build, I'm going to give you some pointers on decent builds to go with. That last potion there was also the neutralizing potion, which resets them all to 0. If you want to change your inclinations around, what I recommend doing, I don't actually recommend using a neutralizing potion because then it has to relearn everything. But what you can do is you can flood it with other potions. So for example, I just changed mine around because they got messed up a little bit. And I made Challenger my primary, Utilitarian my secondary, and my third is Mitigator. You can actually find out your third by going to a bench at a campfire, sitting down at the bench and you talk to your pawn. That's actually how you change your pawn's voice, or not voice, how they speak to you. So, for example, their manner of speak, you can change how much they speak. You can actually change their third and switch their third and second inclination there as well. So, for example, if I went and sat at a bench, there's not one here, otherwise I'd show you. Um, Actually, I can probably show you really quick while I'm talking about it. So if you go to a bench and you use that, you can actually switch the inclinations around. Your pawn will ask you, do you want this inclination or this inclination? one of them is your second, and the other one is your third. So that's why you can find out what your third one is, and you can also switch them around. Now I'm going to check my third one just because I did just fix these. I want to make sure it's right. So when I said flood them, so what I normally did, what I just did is I wanted Medican as my fourth or fifth. Like I said, it's decent at that level for a mage. So what I did is I bought 1 potion of Medican. I bought 3 potions of.
Do you favor a pawn who first targets the weakest prey? One who reacts freely as opportunities arise.
So it's going to ask you. So this is my third. This is my second. I'm going to keep it same. I'm going to keep secondary.
My first
and then they're going to ask me things like
silent
how much they
you
speak.
I trust we will
patterns.
see many victories together. How shall I sell it?
This is all personal flavor. That doesn't affect anything. The inclination is the big thing I'm trying to get in this video. But now let's go down to inclination. So when I basically did this, I got 1 medicant because I wanted it as like the 4th. Now to make sure the other ones were higher, I got 3 potions of utilitarian, 3 of mitigator, 4 of utilitarian, and 5 of challenger. I went overkill just because I don't like medicant being close to the top. I wanted to make sure it was definitely a lower priority. And so what I did is, the way this works is whichever potion you take becomes your primary. So the best thing to do is take the lowest one first. So I took medicant first, took the 1 of that. Then I took the 3 of my mitigator. That made mitigator my primary and medicant my secondary. Then I took my 4 utilitarian, pushing both of those down. Utilitarian became primary, mitigator secondary, medicant third. Then I took all 5 of my challenger, again pushing them down, challenger, utilitarian, mitigator, medicant. That's where I wanted to be. Now the reason for this is ranged mages, I like challenger, I like utilitarian and mitigator. Like I said, it helps thin out the crowd, it's good for them. I also like challenger on my ranged in general. Utilitarian, like I said, is good for a pawn that knows a lot, or just mages in general, because it makes them prioritize exploitation moves, buffing, and stuff like that. Now, Deathstroke's actually a good example because he actually has a pretty good setup. I gave my friend some pointers, and he's done pretty well so far. He's good at what he does. Just doesn't pay as much attention as I do and doesn't get as involved. But he has Scather as a primary. Like I said, fighters, that's not bad. That's actually pretty good. It means that fighter is going to be up in the face. He's going to be attracting the biggest, baddest enemy. He's going to try and keep their attention. Great for a fighter. I like this setup actually a lot. Scather Challenger, Scather Mitigator, even Scather Utilitarian isn't too bad. But those are good ones for a class you want up in the fray. Warriors, fighters, physical-based striders, assassins. Oh, Pawn can't be assassin. Sorry about that. But those are ones you want up in the face. Now, Misa is actually Strider. So having Scather as a primary on Strider is not bad. I personally would switch the 2, but you can do either or. I like Challenger a little bit first because it prioritizes them a little bit more using the bow, which I think Striders that have Scather don't do enough. But what Scather means is she's more likely, again, to focus on her strongest enemy. It also improves her inclination to climb enemies. Striders are great for climbing enemies. When I played my assassin, my Strider had Challenger, Scather, and Mitigator. Or actually, I think it was Utilitarian at the end. Really good. The Challenger made her use bow. Scather meant she would go and climb enemies. Great ones on physical. You wouldn't want Scather on a mage, though. It won't work out as well. I actually am very picky when I pick my pawns. While all mine have decent inclinations, I never pick one that has I never pick one that has Medicant, Guardian, or Nexus as a primary. They never work out right. They sound great, but it causes things to go wrong. And then like I said, if you go to the wiki, if your pawn's doing something weird and you don't know what it is, it might be an inclination. Remember, these change over time. I actually, for a while there, Nicole actually had Scather as her third, instead of Mitigator, because for a while there, I was playing as a Strider, and as a Strider, I go after the big enemies, because I climb them and kill them that way. So she ended up getting Scather as a third, and I had to fix it. But it's something to keep in mind that if your pawn starts acting weird, check your inclinations. If you haven't checked them in a while, make sure to stop at the bench every often. Make sure your third one is what you want, because that's the only one that doesn't show up. But check those. These inclinations play a lot in the AI, how they operate, how they work, and it's an interesting mechanic because it gives your AI basically a subroutine. Because with primary and secondary, what this means is primary is what they're going to do first. So let's go to Deathstroke because he's a Scather. Means he's going to go after the big bad enemy. He's going to try and get their attention. Now, for example, say it's just a bunch of goblins. They're all the same. He's going to go after ranged attacks. He's going to go after ones throwing stones, throwing potions, vials of stuff. You go after them first. Now, if these were flipped, he would actually go after ranged attackers. After ranged attackers dead, then he goes after the biggest enemy. So keep that in mind. What you want to prioritize, basically, it's a thing. So if he can't do number one, he does number two. If he can't do number two, he does number three. But he's gonna go for the highest one on that list at the time. That's why having a bunch of pawns that do Scather isn't good unless you have someone doing challenge or mitigator, because then they all go after the big guy and you're stuck fighting off mooks for the whole entire fight, which is great if that's what you want to do. But trying to have a little variety is good. So keep that in mind. Mitigator normally ends up falling in pretty well, as does Challenger and Scather. Those are three most common I see. They work really well as long as you prioritize them right. Play around with the inclinations. As I said, you can find all this information online. There's a lot of different recommendations on inclinations. These are just a few of my opinions and what I've seen go wrong with certain pawns. So this is something I hope has helped you guys out. It's something the game doesn't do a very good job of explaining. When you make your pawn, you'll see all the bars and it'll ask you a bunch of different questions. Doesn't really do much to explain what's going on though. So I hope this helped you guys out. If you want me to do more of these videos, let me know in the comments. If some doesn't jive with you, you feel confused about a specific subject relating to this, or maybe even something else, just leave a comment below. I'll try and help you out, explain it best I can. If it's something that I feel needs its own video, I'll even do another video for you. Just let me know in the comments. This is something that I'm relatively new to. I've done a few other videos, but I'm not used to this. I haven't done much of this, so any feedback would be appreciated. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Have a good one. Tune in next time. I'll probably put up some more videos if I can think of something else that I want to talk about. But thanks for tuning in. See you guys.